A single warship displacing 100,000 tons cuts through the Pacific Ocean. On its deck, enough firepower to level entire cities. Below deck, 2 nuclear reactors generating power equivalent to a small city. This isn't science fiction. Right now, 11 of these floating fortresses patrol the world's oceans, and America just commissioned the most advanced carrier ever built. The USS Gerald R. Ford represents technology so revolutionary, it makes every previous carrier look ancient. But here's what nobody's telling you. While America celebrates this engineering marvel, a storm is brewing on the horizon that could change naval warfare forever. The question isn't just about how powerful these carriers have become. It's about whether that power still matters in a world where enemies have spent decades developing one specific mission, sinking American carriers before they ever reach the fight. Let's break down what's really happening with America's carrier fleet. Introduction. The U.S. Navy currently operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. 10 of them are Nimitz-class vessels that have served since 1975. And one is the brand-new Ford-class carrier that just changed everything. To understand why these ships represent unprecedented power, you need to know what makes them different from anything that came before. The USS Gerald R. Ford, commissioned in July 2017, cost $13.3 billion. That's more than the GDP of some countries. But you're not paying for size. You're paying for revolutionary technology that fundamentally changes how carriers operate. The Ford class uses something called the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, or EMALS. Instead of steam catapults that have launched planes since World War II, EMALS uses electromagnetic energy to throw 60,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in under 2 seconds. Why does this matter? Because EMALS can launch 30% more aircraft per day than older carriers. That means more firepower, more coverage, more dominance. The old steam catapults were brutal on aircraft airframes, limiting what could be launched. EMALS smooths out the acceleration, allowing the Navy to launch everything from heavy strike fighters to small, unmanned drones with the same system. But the real game changer is power generation. The Ford class produces 250% more electrical power than Nimitz-class carriers. That's not an upgrade. That's a revolution. Half of that power generation capacity isn't even being used yet. It's reserved for future weapons we haven't seen. Directed energy weapons, rail guns, advanced radar systems that can track thousands of targets simultaneously. And here's something most people don't realize. The Ford operates with 700 fewer sailors than a Nimitz-class carrier. Advanced automation handles tasks that used to require hundreds of people. Smaller crews mean lower operating costs, less space needed for berthing, and more room for ammunition and fuel. What do you think about these advances? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know if you're as impressed as we are. Now, the technology is impressive, but technology alone doesn't win wars. What really matters is what these carriers can do that no other military platform on Earth can match. And that's where things get interesting. An American carrier doesn't sail alone. It travels as part of a carrier strike group. That means guided missile cruisers, destroyers, attack submarines, and supply ships all moving together as a coordinated fighting force. The carrier sits in the center, protected by layers of defense so sophisticated that getting close enough to attack it is nearly impossible. The Ford carries twin-engine FA-18EF Super Hornets with a combat range of 1,250 miles. That means the carrier can stay 1,000 miles offshore and still strike targets deep inland. Add the new F-35C stealth fighters, and you're talking about aircraft that can penetrate the most advanced air defenses on the planet without being detected. But the real power isn't just in the fighters. Each carrier operates EA-18G growlers for electronic warfare, jamming enemy radar and communications. E-2D Hawkeyes provide airborne early warning, seeing threats hundreds of miles away. MH-60 helicopters hunt submarines and conduct search and rescue. It's not just a ship, it's an entire air force that moves anywhere in the world. In November 2025, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group entered the Caribbean Sea with 4,000 sailors and dozens of military aircraft. This wasn't a goodwill tour. It was a message. American power can appear anywhere, anytime, fully ready to fight. No other nation on Earth can do this. China operates 3 carriers, but they're diesel-powered with limited range. Russia's carrier is ancient and barely operational. France has 1 nuclear carrier, but it's half the size of an American supercarrier. The United States maintains persistent carrier presence in strategic regions. Right now, the George Washington operates as the forward-deployed carrier in Yokosuka, Japan. The USS Abraham Lincoln patrols the Philippine Sea. The USS Carl Vinson recently completed operations in the Middle East. These aren't occasional deployments. This is permanent global presence. And that's exactly where the second wave of viewers tends to drop off. But here's something that'll make you stay. While America's carriers have become more powerful than ever, America's enemies have spent the last 30 years developing weapons with one specific purpose. And those weapons are now operational. The threat reality. Before we continue, if you're finding this valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch without subscribing, and it costs nothing but helps us tremendously. Now let's talk about what keeps Navy admirals awake at night. In 1996, China suffered a humiliation it has never forgotten. When China conducted missile tests to intimidate Taiwan, President Bill Clinton sent 2 carrier battle groups to the region. China's military watched helplessly. They couldn't track the carriers. They couldn't threaten them. They were powerless in their own backyard. Chinese military strategists made a vow: never again. They couldn't build carriers fast enough to match America's ship for ship. So they developed something else. Weapons specifically designed to kill American carriers from hundreds or even thousands of miles away. The DF-21D, called the Carrier Killer, is an anti-ship ballistic missile with a range of 1,000 miles. The more advanced DF-26B extends that range to 2,600 miles. These aren't cruise missiles skimming the ocean surface. They're ballistic missiles that climb into space, then dive down on carriers from above at hypersonic speeds exceeding Mach 10. And it gets worse. The YJ-21 hypersonic anti-ship missile, unveiled in 2022, can maneuver unpredictably at terminal speeds exceeding Mach 10. Current shipboard defenses weren't designed to stop weapons moving that fast and changing direction mid-flight. Here's the brutal math. Hypersonic missiles travel so fast that even if they're detected at maximum range, the carrier has less than 6 minutes to respond. 6 minutes to track, target, and destroy a missile moving faster than anything in the defensive arsenal. And China doesn't plan to fire 1 missile. They plan to fire dozens simultaneously, overwhelming defensive systems through sheer numbers. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth recently stated that China's hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict. That's not hypothetical fear-mongering. That's based on Pentagon war games that simulate what happens when American carriers face Chinese anti-access/area denial weapons. But before you think America's carrier fleet is obsolete, understand this. The U.S. military has known about this threat for years and has been developing countermeasures that most people have never heard of. Defensive response. American carriers don't rely on hope. They rely on layered defense systems that have been continuously upgraded to handle emerging threats. The Aegis combat system, integrated with SM-6 missile interceptors, provides the first line of defense. The SM-6 can engage both ballistic and cruise missiles, creating a protective bubble hundreds of miles around the carrier. But the real innovation is in what's coming next. The Navy is developing high-energy laser weapons through the HELCAP program, High-Energy Laser Counter Anti-Ship Cruise Missile Program. These aren't science fiction weapons. They're being tested right now. Lasers fire at the speed of light, making them perfect for intercepting hypersonic missiles. And unlike traditional missiles that cost millions of dollars each, a laser shot costs between $1 and $10. The Ford class was designed with this future in mind. That excess electrical generation capacity? It's there to power laser weapons that current technology can't build yet. By the 2030s, carriers will mount 1-megawatt laser systems capable of burning through hypersonic missile bodies before they reach the ship. And that's just kinetic defense. The real battle happens before missiles ever launch. American satellites track Chinese missile launchers in real time, attack submarines, shadow Chinese naval vessels. Cyber warfare units work to disrupt the communications and targeting systems that guide those missiles. Destroying a carrier isn't as simple as firing a missile and hoping it hits. Think about what it actually takes to kill a carrier. First, you need to find it. The ocean is vast, and carriers don't advertise their positions. China's satellite constellation helps, but satellites pass overhead on predictable schedules. Carriers can change course and disappear between satellite passes. Second, you need to track it. That requires continuous surveillance, which means exposing your own surveillance assets to American countermeasures. Third, you need targeting data accurate enough to guide a missile to a moving target 1,000 miles away. Fourth, that missile needs to survive layers of defensive fire from multiple ships equipped with the world's most advanced anti-missile systems. Fifth, even if the missile hits, it needs to cause enough damage to mission kill the carrier. These ships are built tough. They're segmented into dozens of watertight compartments. They have redundant systems. One missile hit might damage the flight deck, but it won't sink the ship. Operational reality check. Recent operations prove carriers still dominate. In 2025, USS Dwight D. Eisenhower spent months in the Red Sea countering Houthi attacks on commercial shipping. The carrier's aircraft flew thousands of sorties, striking missile sites deep inside Yemen. Houthi forces fired anti-ship missiles and deployed underwater drones, using many of the same tactics China would employ. None succeeded in hitting the carrier. The Eisenhower demonstrated exactly what carriers do best: sustained operations in hostile environments far from American soil. Land-based aircraft would need local bases, tanker support, and diplomatic clearance. A carrier just sails into position and starts fighting. During Exercise Talisman Sabre 2025, the USS George Washington conducted dual carrier operations with the British carrier HMS Prince of Wales near Australia. Both carriers operated F-35 fighters, demonstrating integrated Allied air power that no adversary can match. This wasn't just training. It was a message to China. America doesn't fight alone. In February 2025, 3 carriers, USS Carl Vinson, a French carrier, and a Japanese helicopter destroyer, conducted Exercise Pacific Stellar in the Philippine Sea. 3 Allied carriers operating together create an air fleet larger than most countries' entire air forces. That's power projection that land bases simply cannot replicate. Future trajectory. The Navy plans to build 10 Ford-class carriers total. 6 have been announced so far. USS John F. Kennedy, the second Ford-class carrier, is scheduled for commissioning in 2027. USS Enterprise follows in the early 2030s. USS Doris Miller will be the first carrier named after an enlisted sailor and the first named after an African American. In January 2025, President Biden announced that the next 2 carriers would be named USS William J. Clinton and USS George W. Bush. These ships will serve until 2105, meaning the Ford class will define American naval power for the next 80 years. But here's what makes this interesting. The Navy is also studying light carriers, smaller, cheaper platforms that could supplement the supercarrier fleet. The idea is to distribute firepower across more platforms, making it harder for enemies to cripple American naval aviation with a lucky strike on one ship. Some defense analysts argue carriers are obsolete, too expensive, too vulnerable. But those same arguments were made about carriers in World War II, during the Cold War, and after the Persian Gulf War. Every generation predicts the carrier's demise. Every generation is proven wrong. Why? Because carriers do something no other platform can do. They bring American air power anywhere in the world without needing permission from foreign governments. They stay on station for months. They carry everything needed to fight and sustain operations. They're sovereign U.S. territory that moves. So is the U.S. carrier fleet more powerful than ever before? Technologically, absolutely yes. The Ford class represents capabilities that would have seemed impossible 20 years ago. More sorties per day, less crew, more power generation, better sensors, integration with next-generation aircraft and weapons. But power is relative. American carriers face threats today that didn't exist in previous eras. Chinese hypersonic missiles, satellite tracking, cyber warfare. The equation has changed. These ships are more capable than ever, but they're also operating in a more dangerous environment than ever. Here's the truth that doesn't fit into a simple title. American carriers remain the most powerful surface warships in human history. They project more combat power than anything else on the planet. But they're no longer invulnerable. They can't simply park off an enemy coast and operate with impunity the way they did in previous conflicts. Modern carrier operations require sophisticated support. They need attack submarines clearing the path ahead. They need Aegis destroyers creating defensive bubbles. They need satellite intelligence and electronic warfare support. The carrier is still the centerpiece, but it's part of a larger system, not a standalone weapon. And that system is still unmatched. China operates 3 carriers, but they lack the support infrastructure, the trained crews, the operational experience that America has built over 80 years of carrier aviation. Russia's carrier barely functions. No other nation can even attempt what America does routinely. Conclusion. The U.S. carrier fleet represents the largest investment in naval power in human history. 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers, each one a floating airbase more powerful than most countries' entire militaries. The technology keeps advancing, the threats keep evolving, but through it all, these ships remain the ultimate symbol of American military reach. Whether they're more powerful than ever before depends on how you measure power. In terms of technology and capability, absolutely. In terms of operational freedom and invulnerability, the answer is more complicated. What's certain is this: for the foreseeable future, if America needs to project power anywhere on Earth, carriers will lead the way. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth military analysis. We cut through the hype to show you what's really happening with America's defense capabilities.